week 3 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few players I'd look to sell and trade this week. I'm not saying sell these guys and dump them for anything, but I believe some of these players are playing over their head, and you could get great value for them. The first play, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. So what it started, it's been for Kamara turning back the clock in the early going in the first 2 weeks of the season, where Kamara's gone out there and had monster ball games, 5 touchdowns, including 4 in last week's ball game at the Dallas Cowboys, where he went out there 180 total yards from scrimmage. Kamara, 4 touchdowns on 2 catches, and they made easy work with this New Orleans Saints team of the Dallas Cowboys. So week 3, another pretty decent matchup, I believe, on paper versus the Philadelphia Eagles. But if I'm the Kamara owner, where we've seen over the last few seasons, he's been declining, is Kamara, even though the first 2 games of the year he's gone out there and had monster performances. The number 1 player in all fantasy football in points is Alvin Kamara at the skill positions besides quarterback. He's a player I would see if I could get maybe a running back and a receiver in a deal, especially if you're dealing with injuries, and we've seen a lot of injuries this week. We've seen Pacheco go down at the running back position. He's banged up. We'll see how long he might miss as well. We've seen Cooper Kupp banged up, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson banged up, Puka Nacua was out. He's been out now. So I think Alvin Kamara, you put him, especially if your team's 1-1 and 0-2, I would put him on the trade block and see if I could get a big package for him, because obviously he's not going to keep it up. I believe Alvin Kamara at this pace, 5 touchdowns, including 4 in the last game in the first 2 games of the season. And teams, I think, are going to start zeroing in on Kamara more and respecting him after he's broken out once again the first 2 games of the year. So right now, while Kamara's playing great football, and this is the best he's going to be, I believe, all season, he's a sell-high candidate this week. But like I said, you got to get a good deal to sell him off. Next player is J.K. Dobbins of Los Angeles Chargers. So far in the first 2 outings of the year, Dobbins has gone out there over 130 yards, and he's looked great, J.K. Dobbins. But the injury concerns are always going to be a problem, I believe. Torn ACL a couple years ago, torn Achilles last season, and Dobbins now, he's been great for this Los Angeles Charger team and leading the league in rushing in the first 2 weeks. But I believe the schedule is going to get tougher, where teams are going to zero in on J.K. Dobbins and Justin Herbert with the young plays at the receiver position to try to beat him. And the next 2 weeks are tough matchups at the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs. So with tough matchups coming up for J.K. Dobbins and the Chargers in terms of teams stopping the run. So with the injury concerns, I would sell Dobbins off this week. Another player, I'm not just going to trade him off to trade him, but if you could get good value for Dobbins, and like I said, he's not going to run over 100 yards every game, this will be the time to do it. Next play is Aaron Jones of the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones, so far, he's looked decent with the Minnesota Vikings, but something interesting in the Week 2 ball game. Ty Chandler, 10 carries. Jones, 14 touches total in that game. So I believe Jones, he's not going to be a full workhorse for this Minnesota Viking team. I know Week 1, he had a little more touches, 16 touches total in that game. But Ty Chandler, he's getting some work in this. It's pretty much like a 60-40, maybe 65-35 split in this backfield from Minnesota. And Aaron Jones, he's had injury problems over the last few seasons. Up there in age now, where we know running backs in that 28 to 30-year-old range, the decline starts. And I think Aaron Jones, his best days are behind him. Ty Chandler, he looks like a better running back and a better receiver out of the backfield by the eye. And we saw Chandler in Week 2 go out there, 8.2 yards per carry. So I think Chandler, he's going to be in this mix the whole season with Aaron Jones in the backfield. And also with the injury concerns, he's a back I would sell off this week. The next back, Brian Robinson Jr. of the Washington Commanders. So Brian Robinson, the first 2 weeks of the season, he's been one of the better running backs in fantasy football. Week 1, he went out there, 17.90 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And Week 2, we went out there as well with 14 fantasy points with a whopping 17 carries, 133 rush yards. So Eckler is still back there in the backfield. He's going to be the passing downs back, even though Robinson, I think, is a decent receiver out of the backfield. But there's going to be a lot of games where Washington's trailing the season and Jaden Daniels is going to try to make things happen with his legs and throw the football. Eckler in the backfield catching it. So Robinson off to a monster start. But I believe you could get a good receiver in a deal for Robinson this week, and he's a sell-high candidate. I believe the next player, Calvin Ridley of the Tennessee Titans. Calvin Ridley, he definitely was surprising in the Week 2 loss versus the New York Jets. 2 touchdowns in that one for Ridley. And obviously, he's the number 1 target on the offense in the passing game is Ridley. DeAndre Hopkins, he's done nothing the first 2 weeks of the season. And Will Levis likes hitting Calvin Ridley deep on those deep balls, and we've seen it in the early going. So after coming off a 20.7-point game in PPR leagues, Calvin Ridley is a sell-high candidate because I think teams, if they were smart, you roll that coverage Ridley's way to make Will Levis hit other targets on the offense and try to beat him. So Ridley so far in the early going, one mid-game and one great game for him. And now the next couple games, Green Bay and Miami coming up, where those are beatable secondaries. I believe Ridley in this offense with Will Levis, who's an up-and-down quarterback and not proven, and an offensive line that isn't good. He's going to be inconsistent, I believe, at times is Ridley. So after coming off a great ball game, he's a sell-high play this week. Next play is Devin Singletary of the New York Giants. Devin Singletary so far the first 2 weeks has looked pretty decent for this New York Giant team. But I believe if the Giants continue to struggle, we're going to see the rookie Tracy starting to get some work sooner than later for New York. And even in that Week 2 game at Washington, he did have a fumble loss, but finished with 95 yards and a touchdown as Devin Singletary. So last season we saw good flashes, a few games over 150 yards for Devin Singletary. But in this offense of the New York Giants, I believe defenses are going to start zeroing in and try and stop the run and force Daniel Jones to try to beat him. And I believe that's going to be the game plan. And I believe as well Tracy is going to get more touches. So the schedule gets tougher after coming off of 2 good games versus Minnesota and Washington, where their defenses aren't all that great. But now Week 3 at Cleveland and Week 4 at Dallas, even though I know Dallas got shredded by the New Orleans Saints, I believe they're going to buckle down now, especially versus the New York Giants in a couple weeks, and play good run defense. So Singletary, I think you could get a decent wide receiver, a back-end receiver, or even a quarterback in a deal for him this week as a sell-high candidate. And this might be one of his better games running the football, I believe, this season as well for Singletary. So he's a sell-high. And the final player I look to sell and trade this week is James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. So James Conner, he's looked great in the early going, no doubt about it. And this Cardinal offense is lethal. Marvin Harrison had the breakout game. Trey McBride, solid tight end, one of the better guys in the league, I believe, at the position. And Kyler Murray, he's looked healthy so far in the early going. So the first 2 games of the year, James Conner's gone out there and he's had big performances for this Arizona Cardinal team. But also he's had pretty good matchups on the ground. And also as well, we know Conner's been an injury risk over the last few seasons. They drafted Trey Benson in a decent spot in the NFL draft. So right now, while Conner has been a great running back for this Arizona Cardinal team, I would test the waters a little bit to see what I could get. I'm not saying go out there and sell him for anything as James Conner. But like I said, he's had 2 pretty easy matchups on paper at the Buffalo Bills that aren't good versus the run. We saw Achane tear him up as well in Week 2. And then versus the Los Angeles Rams, where their run defense isn't good, where we saw Montgomery and Gibbs in Week 1 have games versus them. So now Detroit coming up, and then Washington and San Francisco the next few weeks. I don't believe Conner's going to go out there and just put up these monster performances every week. So right now, after coming off of 2 great performances and looking healthy, I will put him on the block and see if you could get good value for Conner. So that's a few plays I look to sell and trade for Week 3 of the fantasy football season.